guys, my name is Jessica Leichtweisz. I'm the CEO of Hope Education Services. I get your questions answered about education, IEPs, about autism, anything you need to know to make sure your child is really successful in school and at home, socially, emotionally, and academically. So sometimes I partner with amazing people to get your questions answered. Today, I have a special guest on. His name is Aidan Allan Cooper. He is autistic and an education advocate, self-advocate, and an advocate for your child. And so I have him addressing this question that a parent sent in, saying that her child has been suspended from the school. Her child has an IEP. The parent didn't make it quite clear whether or not the behavior he's being suspended for was a result or in any way related to the IEP, which I think does matter. But Aidan is the person who can answer and address this question for you. So Aidan, welcome to the call. Thank you so much for jumping on today. And can you answer this question for that parent who wants to know what she should do if her child is suspended and she thinks that it's not okay to suspend him based on his IEP?
Thank you so much again for having me. And I'm really happy to be doing this because actually this is a question that really pops up in so many areas, especially now. So really what happens is that if a child, let's say, has an IEP and has a behavior listed that the school is trying to rehabilitate or trying to ensure that that doesn't interrupt the child's education, if they are suspended for that, 99% of the time, that's not acceptable whatsoever. And good public schools are really going to do the right thing, and they're going to try to ensure that the child is able to, instead of having it be a disciplinary issue, have it as, while they may receive discipline, it would be still within the school, and they're able to provide corrective action to the behavior or to the problem. And that's something that some schools really do well with, and unfortunately there are some schools that really love handing out suspensions like candy. So that's something that is the clear-cut answer for that. But if, let's say, it was a behavior that wasn't listed on the IEP, so let's say your child has dyslexia and has a specific learning disability, and the principal or the vice principal, whomever, catches the child, let's say, and this is very sad, but it does happen, dealing drugs or having some type of activity that isn't related to some of the behaviors that are seen within the IEP, it is likely that the principal in the school or the school will have the right to suspend the child. But that can be a little bit confusing to understand, and it really does depend on the IEP. But if there's a behavior that is very drastically different that the child's engaging in from the IEP, a lot of times they will have the right to do that, but sometimes it's very confusing, and sometimes it might be a little bit gray. It might feel as though the behavior is possibly correlated to that, and that's why sometimes during dispute resolution processes, they'll have a manifestation of disability hearing where there's a hearing that's conducted to determine whether or not, if a child was suspended or expelled or whatever might incur, was it a manifestation of their disability or was it something completely separate? And if it is a manifestation of their disability and they were suspended, then that's wrong and there'll be damages awarded. Or if it wasn't determined that it wasn't and it was a completely separate thing, then the suspension would stand. So it really depends on your child, and that's why it's so important where if you're not entirely sure or if you have questions, whatever it may be, reaching out to a consultant or an advocate, such as myself or any other people, we have the ability to kind of help you figure out an answer and to really guide you through this process, because it's really unfortunate and sad whenever a child gets to the point where they're suspended for any particular reason. So it's just something to look into, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely, Aidan. I've had a couple times in my career I've worked in this situation, and so one example of a time where I worked with a child, he was autistic, he was afraid of the rain, and that was indicated on his IEP. During a thunderstorm, he ran out of the classroom, and the child, it had been on the IEP, the child elopes, the school attempted to suspend him for that behavior, they couldn't do it. The parent won when they fought against the school. You know, I worked in a similar, not really a similar situation, a completely opposite situation where a child brought a knife into the school, and he was dyslexic and he had an IEP for his dyslexia. The school attempted to say, well, hey, he has an IEP, you can't suspend him. Well, that wasn't the case, because obviously bringing a knife to school has absolutely nothing to do with dyslexia. So that suspension did stay. So yeah, whether or not it has to do with the IEP, that I guess at times can be a controversy, as if is the behavior they're being suspended for a direct result of a disability. That's something your parent will have to prove if they're trying to fight a suspension. So thank you so much for answering that question. Aidan and I actually co-collaborated on an anthology called This is Autism. We want to let you know a little bit about it. If you have a child that's autistic, if you have a child who's going through the special education services, maybe you don't really fully understand what they're going through. They're a child, so they can't tell you whether they're nonverbal or just because they're a kid. These are 12 autistic adults. Aidan is on here. He's one of the people who shared his story, the good and the bad of their experiences growing up with autism, living with autism. And you can check this out. It's available on Amazon, excuse me. This is Autism, available on Amazon. The link will be in the description below. If you have any questions you want me to answer, I'd be happy to make a video for you. Just head over to my website, hopeeducationservices.com, and I'll make the next video will be your question.